Department of Youth Services, we receive very high-risk youth from the juvenile court in Massachusetts, and our responsibility is to provide a range of services and keep kids safe, engaged, and then hopefully the plan is for a return to the community at some point in better shape than when they came in the first place. It's really oversimplified, but that's what we're trying to accomplish. Well, I think it's a significant effort on the part of the Commonwealth to get in line with the national trend toward figuring out what actually works with people that are in the criminal justice system and use data to inform decision making and to really take a look at the national landscape and see what programs are working and see if there are any that are worth replication in Massachusetts, so that at the end of the day the Commonwealth gets a return on its investment and obviously accounts for public safety short-term and public safety long-term. The biggest metric or goal for the criminal justice system and for the juvenile justice system is to reduce recidivism, account for public safety, provide rehabilitative services, but account for reducing recidivism so that the people that come into the system as offenders exit as law-abiding citizens. And I think the challenge is, what are the activities that can be delivered in the context of the system that'll contribute to lower recidivism? The criminal justice system is very expensive. So the question is, if you're spending that kind of public money, how can you spend it the most efficiently and get the results? Evidence-based practices and evidence-based policy is something that, again, it's a national trend, and I think this is really smart to tap into what jurisdictions have figured some of this out so that we can replicate models that work. And the idea is that you really have to have a declared practice that has evidence behind it that demonstrate that it works before you would invest money in it. And I think what's happening in Massachusetts is that we're slowly migrating toward services that have been proven to be effective and away from services that and activities that we've done just because we've always done them. And I think that's really a big piece of the platform is what are the activities that are going to achieve the outcome, which is lower recidivism and increased public safety, and then being able to shift the funding and the resources toward the activities that are going to get you there, rather than doing programs that we've always done that really don't have the data and the research behind them as effective. I think that's been part of what's gone on, and to have all the policymakers at the table for a deliberative conversation so people can think that through and make that shift. One of the biggest challenges with recidivism and juveniles is that there's an emerging piece of research on the adolescent brain that underscores the fact that the majority of the young people that we're working with have not quite grown up yet. And so we're engaged with young, impulsive kids that have an awful long way to go in the maturation process. And so the question becomes, how do you hold them accountable and engage them in a constructive process that results in change? I think the kids have a huge upside because because their future is so extended compared to adults. But the challenge is that they're more impulsive, they're more influenced by peers, they're more prone to bad decisions. And there's a concept out there called desistance, which is when people stop committing crime chronologically, and that's throughout your 20s into your 30s and 40s. But as you're in your teen years, you're peaking on your criminal activity. So we're actually at DYS receiving the highest risk group of people from a recidivism standpoint, because they haven't stopped yet. and they don't have the insight and the self-regulation and self-control to make the decisions that will translate into law-abiding behavior and a reduction in recidivism. So our challenge is really tall, and the national research talks about the fact that kids are different than adults. So it's not that you don't want the same outcome, it's that the engagement strategy is very different with a 16-year-old, 17-year-old boy than it is with a 35-year-old man or woman who's been in the system for a long time. So we have to really figure out, how to get their attention and get them engaged, and then what are the program activities that are really going to help them build the skill and the insight and improve the decision making, so that when they're being considered for release to the community, that we've been able to mitigate some of the risk that they present, because we're receiving really high-risk individuals out of the juvenile court. Well, there's a lot of research on the adult side about the connection between educational attainment and a reduction in recidivism, and meaningful employment and a reduction in recidivism. And on the juvenile side, what we're trying to do is just that, try to build up educational skill, some orientation to exploring employment and vocational opportunities for kids. We're also obviously delivering a wide range of behavioral health services. We use a methodology called dialectical behavioral therapy, which essentially is a strategy that helps kids gain insight and be able to manage themselves and manage their emotions so that they can sit through class, sit through counseling, and try to find ways, again, to help these guys attain some skills and grow up. One of the things that we do routinely is build up their grade levels while they're in custody. A lot of the kids that we receive are well below grade level when they present, not because they're not intelligent, but because they have poor school adjustment. A lot of them have not been in school for a period of time, have had a bad experience in the public school system, and then we get them in small structured classroom settings and they start to build that back up. So to the extent that we can get kids to start to feel good about being back in class and start to feel good about their grasp of the educational material, there's a chance that they'll continue with that. So education and employment are really primary. One of the other things that we're really focused on, and there's some emerging research on this too, is engaging families in the strategy with kids. And that's a lot different on the adult side, because in our scenario, the family means generally parent or guardian, and on the adult side, it could be any range of family members that might be visiting. So for us, what we're really, one of the things that we've been working on strategically for a period of time now is, to the extent that we can get the parent on board with the plan for the kid, that we have a better chance of success, so that the child is not siding with the parent against the system decision maker, but that the parent and the system decision makers are teamed up in the best interest of this youth's progress. And so family, education, employment, some of the recreational opportunities, we've been using art, poetry, and music as ways to engage kids, get their interest, and open the door to a broader rehabilitative discussion. For some of these kids, it actually opens the door so that they start to engage, because the strategy in the system to dictate the terms to a teenager and tell them that they have to be in school, they have to work, they have to be in at 8 o'clock, without giving them the coaching and the support and the skills to be able to deliver on those limits, it's a failed strategy. So we've taken a much different strategy, and it would be similar to what you would try to do with your own child if they were struggling in school. There's a saying out there that what you measure matters, and I think the fact that our data is being shared with outside agencies and the public outside of our agency is really healthy for us to have another set of eyes from an accountability standpoint and from a discipline standpoint. And I think that, you know, we've benefited from some of the thinking and some of the logistics that have been presented. I think we've benefited from being at the table, and we certainly have, in the window of this project, done a better job at measuring and sharing how many kids pass their MCAS for science, how many kids pass their MCAS for math, how many kids got their high school diploma last year, how many kids got their GED, which is now called HiSET, and how many kids have achieved those markers, and we're doing it in a way that we're entering it into a database so that we can pull from it. So the data is readily available. So I think, you know, some of the success for us has been more process, in that we're more disciplined and benefiting more from the transparency and the regular input and output of the data. I think, you know, again, part of what's happened is one more encouraging front to make sure that we're being consistently disciplined about capturing data and using data. And I know that one of the things that goes on in our agency at this point is, to the extent that anybody wants to come in and talk about a new program, you know, the first question I ask is, where's the data? Where's the research and the science behind it? So that we're not going to just, you know, entertain programs that sound good. We're going to entertain programs that actually have proven to work elsewhere. And, you know, we've taken on a couple of evidence-based practices. One is motivational interviewing, which is, you know, pretty universally recognized as an effective technique in working with offenders. We also have taken on a program called Parenting with Love and Limits, which is a program that is recognized by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, the federal juvenile justice agency. And it's an engagement strategy. It's prescriptive, but it's worked, and there's program evaluations that confirm that it's an effective practice. And we've taken that on in Massachusetts, and we've tried to keep that as part of our operational and organizational behavior, basically, that we're going to take on what works, and we're going to track what we do, and we're going to be smart enough to know when we're not doing well, so we can change course. And I think a lot of that's been reinforced through just that whole conversation and that consortium of people.